Hi, my next guest on the Self-Leadership Success Summit is not only a multiple author, 8 books, a professional speaker, in fact, a fellow certified speaking professional, but he's a very good friend. Please welcome Jerome Joseph. Hello, Jerome.
Hi, Andrew. I'm so glad to be here on your program. I'm very excited about the summit. I've looked at the lineup, world class.
Very good. Well, I'm sure you're going to add some world-class content here because for the viewers, you are a guru on branding. Tell us your story. How did you become a guru on branding?
It started in university. It started in 1994 when I was studying, and I was very fascinated with the study of brands. And in my, for my degree, my first job was in a brand consulting company. And it really opened the door to really understanding what branding was about from a consulting perspective. And over the years, I've always, in fact, till today, I'm still a consultant. I still go in and I work with brands, I advise, and I work with global brands. But that was the trigger. Working and really being hands-on in implementing brand strategies, that was a trigger. And that was a trigger that also moved me towards speaking and training in the area of branding as well.
Okay, and your I think it's your 8th book is the Brand Playbook, which I have my signed copy here. Yep, you have the same one, right? This 88
twins.
Yeah, 88 strategies or 88 plays for branding.
Yeah.
Today, I particularly want to talk about self-leadership. So as somebody here is a self-leadership and success, they have to become in of themselves a brand. As you know, as a speaker, my brand is around self-leadership. Other people are branded around different things. So if somebody watching this wants to work on their own brand, where do they start? I mean, other than obviously reading your book, of course.
Sure. So I do a lot of coaching with personal brands, and I typically have a framework which I take personal brands through. Would you like me to share this framework?
I would love you, and I think everybody in the audience would love you to share that framework.
So I'm going to give you, it's simple. It's a 5D framework, and I'm going to simplify it for you. But if you want to start working on your personal brand, there are 5 key steps that you need to take. And I've done this and researched this over my 22 years of really working with some of the biggest global brands in the world. The first thing that you need to start thinking about is the discover phase. How do I discover what my brand stands for? How do I discover my environment in which I operate in? And you do that by really, doing a lot of self-discovery, looking at environment, looking at your market. And this is key because when you go and execute your brand, if you do not have clear insight, then it's a shotgun approach. You just boom. I want to build my brand. I'm shooting it out there. But if you have clearer insight, this helps you with the strategy moving forward. So that's the first thing, discover.
So in terms of the discover, I mean, you say, this is a self-awareness piece for an individual. Who am I? What do I stand for? What are my values? But you're also talking about context as well. The discover.
Exactly.
How do other people perceive me? Is that part of it?
How other people perceive you, and not just that. We talk about context. I like the word context. Is how you operate in your environment. What's happening in your business? What's happening in your environment?
Yeah.
That's going to impact your own personal brand. So it's about your self-discovery. You talking to your customers, your stakeholders. You looking at your marketplace, looking at your competition and what they are doing. And this helps you now determine a foundation of data and insight. It's going to help you with the strategy part of your personal brand.
So would you recommend somebody goes, go out to their personal friends, their trusted friends and say, if you had 5 words to describe me, what would those 5 words be? Is that the sort of discovery?
It's not as simple as that, but it's a good direction.
Right.
It's a good direction to start by going and talking to people that, again, it's, friends will be friends. Yeah. I mean, ideally, you should be picking and talking to people that you potentially want to be doing business with in the future, or you're potentially going to be interacting in the future. That should be your priority, your priority, right? Your tier 1 audience. And you ask questions, you're right, asking questions about what they think about you, where they see your strengths, where they see your weaknesses, what can be improved. Those are key things that you try to find out when you talk to your target audience.
Is this like a SWOT analysis? Strengths, weaknesses?
A SWOT analysis tends to be very personal. So the SWOT analysis is when you self-discover yourself. So again, for example, I have a coaching client, and when he did his self-discovery, he put himself on a pedestal.
Yeah.
And then he went out and started talking to his stakeholders, and he realized that everything he thought about himself was completely different from what people thought about him.
Ouch.
And you do the same in real life with brands, right? And that's where you have strategies to close the gap.
Okay.
And that's key. That's what discovery helps you do. It helps you close this gap.
Okay. So in the self-leadership model, that's very much about the self-awareness. How do I see myself? How do other people see people? So that's your first D is discovery.
First D. Second D is define. So now that you have all this insight, it is very crucial to do two things. And in my own proprietary model, I start with my coachee. I help them set their goals. So they define their big, hairy goals of where they want to go, where they see themselves in the 1 year, 3 years, 5 years. We set those goals for them. So that's the first part of the D, is the defining your goals. The second part of define, in the define stage, is to define your target audience, your segments. Being very clear, being absolutely very clear about what they want, what their needs are, what their pain points are, what makes them do what they do.
Is this the niching piece? If you define, right? As a lot of people, fail to recognize. I mean, as we're both coaches, a lot of coaches say, "Well, I'll coach anybody," whereas successful coaches say, this is my niche. This is my.
Exactly.
I coach. Not just I don't teach senior leaders. I teach senior leaders to transition to X or So the define piece is niching. Yes.
Yeah. I mean, I may not use the word niche. I mean, I think the word that I use. I mean, you're right. It's kind of niche, but the word that I use is focus.
Focus.
Because when you are out there, I mean, as a personal brand, you have specifically time. Time is is resource. Money is resource. So for you to be able to focus on getting your brand out there, being able to focus on the right stakeholder, the right person, the right audience, that is extremely crucial in branding. The best brands in the world are masters of focus. So that's key, right? It's that segmentation piece, defining your audience, that's key.
Okay. All right. So we got 2 Ds. We've got discover, we've got define. What comes next?
The third D is it's a strategy piece, the develop. Yeah. So at this stage is where you now develop your brand. Right. And there are a few things that I teach in my program, when I work with personal brands, is of course setting your DNA. Yeah. So for example, Andrew, if I were to ask you, Andrew, tell me 3 words that best describe you, your values. What would that 3 words be?
Transformation, creating change. Ownership, making sure people take responsibility. And impact, making sure that there's a measurable difference somewhere.
Fantastic. And you see, a lot of people don't know that. They don't know at this stage, right? At the value stage, they don't know this. They don't know what they stand for. What are their values? And we help them get to that values and help them formulate that. Because this drives everything else you do. Because I've known you for a long time, and everything you've just said to me, I have seen in you. You demonstrate that. You demonstrate that in the way you talk. You demonstrate it in the way you write. I look at across your social channels. I see these values being demonstrated. And that's a key aspect of personal branding, being able to develop that and making sure that this, and in fact, when you talk about values, earlier on I talked about closing the gap.
Yeah.
Those values that you define help you also close the gap to get you closer to this customer, this target audience. Right. How would these values fit with this audience that you are now connecting with? And that's key. So that's the first part of the develop stage. We then move into differentiation. Right. So this is the problem.
So we've discovered, we've defined, we've developed, and now we're going to differentiate.
No, so part of develop is still, it's not that.
There's a sub D, is there?
It's a subset, right? So it's the essence, creating your essence. Yeah. So once you know who you are, the second part of that is how are you now positioned in the marketplace. So this is the other problem that you see. There are, for example, in the world of speaking, you throw a rock and I'm a speaker.
Yeah.
There are speakers everywhere. Why would someone want to hire you? Why would someone want to do business with you? If you're a consultant, why would someone choose you above any other consultant? And that is where the differentiation piece comes in. If you are unable to show your differentiation in the marketplace clearly, you will be like everyone else. And that's a key part of personal branding. So it doesn't matter if you are an entrepreneur or you're working inside an organization. It's the same thing. How can you stand out among all the other executives? Because, I mean, the executive that stands out is the one that's going to get promoted. He's the one that's going to be climbing the ranks. She's going to be top of the game by being noticed. So the differentiation piece is a crucial part of the developed strategy.
Yeah, I mean, the number of conversations I have with senior executives around this is that, you know, people can get a reasonable level in an organization with the assumption that if I do good work, I will get noticed. Yeah. Unfortunately, that only takes you so far, you know, because everybody says they're doing good work. You have to put your hand up for a project, or you have to speak up in the boardroom. You have to say, you know, that's a great idea. However, there's another thing to consider. Right? To have the courage to be a little bit different. And of course, we're both speaking in Asia right now, where being different is something that people aren't very comfortable with, are they?
Yeah.
All right.
But you see, I mean, it doesn't mean, when you use the word differentiation, it doesn't mean that you have to wear a pink shirt and have a feather in your cap. That's not differentiation, right? Differentiation should come from in many ways. For example, you could differentiate, for example, by the amount of experience that you have. Mm-hmm. That's a differentiation strategy. Mm-hmm. You could say, look, I've been doing this for 22 years. I mean, if you notice, one of the things that I do when I differentiate is I'm a lot younger than you, but I differentiate against other speakers in the marketplace by focusing on the fact that I've worked in 33 countries. Mm-hmm. I use they call it credibility by volume, but it's also differentiation by showing that, look, I've done 33 countries, I've written 8 books. I use that as social proof. Mm-hmm. And this helps differentiate you in the marketplace. So that's just one. And in my book, I talk about there are at least 18 different differentiation strategies that you can use to differentiate yourself inside an organization or outside an organization.
Very good. Bit of free consulting here. Have I differentiated myself?
Of course you have. Of course you have.
And
it's because of this thing that you did, focus. Yeah. You focused on self-leadership. Unlike many of the leadership speakers that are out there, like you ask them, what do you speak on? I'm a leadership speaker. And there's a dozen of them, but you own the word self-leadership. Your book title was self-leadership. So that's where that focus comes in. And you differentiate it by owning, and that's where the niche comes in, right? You differentiate through niche, but you own that space in leadership.
Very good. All right. So are we on to the next D?
Yes.
I'm tracking this. I am tracking this.
Yeah, yes, you are. So I'm gonna have a quiz after this, right? To see if you've been paying attention.
I've been paying attention. Yeah. All right.
So the fourth D is the deliver.
Yep.
And this is where you deliver your brand. Yep. So a lot of times, if you're a business owner, this is common. So how do some people deliver? Social media, offline, all these different platforms are when they start delivering their brand. What we tell our clients to do is when you choose to deliver, make sure it's driven by the first 3 Ds.
Right.
Because the first 3 Ds give you that insight. For example, you talk about the values that I talked about, the differentiation I talked about. This now helps you now when you deliver. Mm-hmm. So we help them come up with a personal brand plan. Mm-hmm. And within the plan itself, it's a very, very clear format where you create a plan, you look at how you can deliver this, deliver your brand in the marketplace. So it could be online, it could be online. So for example, one of the things that you did to deliver your brand is through a book. Mm-hmm. So that's an offline tactic. Mm-hmm. You also have channels that you use to deliver your brand. So that's the fourth D, deliver.
Okay. So if somebody is obviously running their own company and they have a brand or they're a consultant, I understand that. If somebody's watching this and they're inside an organization, what does delivery look like for them?
So I just finished doing a workshop recently, a few weeks ago, with a team of executives, and so we help them plan the deliver plan. Mm-hmm. So the essence is very simple. How do I deliver in the key touch points where I interact with my different audiences? Mm-hmm. So if I'm talking to my boss, what do I need to do? How do I represent my brand in that space? Mm-hmm. If I am in a staff meeting room, how do I deliver my brand in that staff meeting? If I am in a town hall, what am I doing? So this, you map out your touch points and you talk about how your brand can be delivered through these touch points.
One of the aspects of self-leadership sorry, I'm losing my earphone here. One of the aspects of self-leadership that I talk about, an extension of self-leadership, is executive presence, the ability to project confidence, gravitas under pressure. So it's just not what you say, it's how you say it. You say it with this gravitas. You know, I think this is an important, this is an important point. I think you need to listen to this. You know, even if you're speaking truth to power, boss, I think you need to take a look at this. So it's having the courage and the confidence to be turn up and be fully present. Would that correlate with your deliver piece?
Yes, it would. Yeah. If it's a reflection of your brand, I mean, especially executive presence, I think that's a very crucial aspect of how you position a brand. It's a big touch point. And being able to get your brand represented confidently in that key touch point, yeah, you're right. Absolutely.
So the individual needs to look at opportunities for visibility, because otherwise, if the delivery, if their delivery is behind email and people aren't going to see them, then they're going to be forgettable. So they need to actually proactively look for, can I speak at a conference, or can I speak at the meeting? If there is a group call on a Polycom, although Polycom's I just heard the other day was bought out by Plantronics. But anyway, you're on a mass call. You need to be contributing. You need to be visible, audible in that delivery, because if you're invisible, nobody's going to promote you.
And there's something else that I share, right? And I've been trying to advocate this with the clients I've spoken to. So you deliver inside your organization. So if you're working for an organization, you have to deliver inside. But it doesn't mean you stop your plan from going outside as well. Because when you are outside, I mean, a great channel, for example, would be LinkedIn. How you position your brand in LinkedIn is extremely crucial, because not just about the company you work in today, you are thinking 5 years down the road. So if you go back to the earlier day, we talked about goals, isn't it? Yeah. So 5 years down the road, if you're an engineer and you want to be the best goddamn engineer in the world, what are you doing now? Today, it's going to help you get to that goal in 5 years' time.
Okay, excellent, excellent, very good. I think everybody should have. I don't work for LinkedIn. I don't get any commission from LinkedIn. Gee, I wish I did. But I think you need to update your LinkedIn profile. I mean, once upon a time. You would go to a consultant to help you understand what you needed to put in a CV. What I like about the LinkedIn framework is, if you fill in all the boxes that it asks you to fill in, you have created it's almost a brand template, isn't it? Your experience, your education, any honors or awards that you have received, projects you've been involved in. So I think it's very good.
But I think today, by the way, that's not good enough, though. I think filling up a LinkedIn profile is passé. Right. I mean, if you want to up your game, you want to be a strong personal brand, it's about making sure that you have a branded LinkedIn profile. And it's just one touch point. It's multiple touch points, but again, I met an executive about 2 weeks back who said, I already have a LinkedIn profile. What else do I need? I go, it's not good enough. There's nothing about your brand in that. And that's what people want to see. They want to know your story and what you have done, in terms of your brand in the marketplace.
Yeah. Well, a good LinkedIn profile, you actually get a sense of the personality coming. I mean, you can add videos, etc. And they can say, here's what I stand for, right? Not, between 2005 and 2006, I worked here. Between 2005 and 2006, this is the transformation I created in my organization, or these are the people that I changed. I think,
and remember, right, in the plan, Andrew, one of the things I want to mention is that it's not just LinkedIn. You got to be doing this across as many channels that suits your environment. You think of the channels, you identify them, and you put everything in it, and that's the key, right? That's the personal branding key.
Now, I want to caution people; they don't have to be across everything. I mean, I'm not on Snapchat. Now, my teenage daughters are, but I'm not.
So it's what's in your environment. So remember, I used a disclaimer, right? So if it fits your environment, if you are working with a teenage market and that's your audience, you got to be on that platform. It's a no-brainer. So it's the channels that you choose that fit the environment that you're in.
Very good, very good. So how many Ds are we on? We've
4 Ds.
We've discovered, we've defined.
Good.
We have. Hang on. Did we do something before we delivered? We did something before we delivered, didn't we?
Develop.
We developed, then we developed,
Yes.
then we delivered. Right, I'm on track.
Then we deliver.
Right, good.
And the fifth thing, the fifth D is drive.
Right.
And this is where, once you have this built, the drive is the continuity
Yeah.
of what of your personal brand. Because people think people think that personal branding is a quick fix. It's not. It's a journey. I mean, you've been in this business for a long time, Andrew.
Yes,
And
20 years this year.
And I know how much investment you put in to keep building your brand and growing your brand.
Mm-hmm.
And that's where the D comes in. The D is, how can I drive my brand? How can I drive my brand even further with my target audiences?
Mm-hmm.
How can I drive my brand to increase my sales even further? How can I drive my brand to move me from A to thought leadership, for example?
Mm-hmm. Okay. Yeah, because I mean, thought leader is one of those ones that gets bandied around a little bit, and I think I think it might be losing some of its gravitas. A thought leader is, obviously people can deliver content, but to challenge people to see the world in a new way, I think that's, for me, that would be the definition of thought leader. It means that you really know your topic so well, you can simplify it for people and use it to get people to see the world in a new way. And we need thought leaders. A lot of people aren't using their cognitive abilities these days. They're not thinking.
Yeah. I mean, if it falls within your space and if thought leadership is a space that you are moving towards, then yes. But, for example, I have someone who's in home care. Mm-hmm. Right? So she goes in and she wants to up a personal brand game. So she goes in and she looks after all people in their homes. Mm-hmm. And that's a job. She's a home care nurse. And she goes, what am I supposed to do to build my personal brand? How do I drive it? And I go, well, your drive now is inspiration.
Right. What
you're doing makes a big difference. So you now have to drive this to build a community, for example, to get other people to be home care, because it's a profession that's dying. It's tough to find a good nurse, for example, home care nurse in Singapore. So I said that could be something that you could do. So the drive, right? That's the inspiration bit of the model. It's what you're going to take to go to the next level. Mm-hmm. Go up the value chain. What is it? That's a drive part.
Yeah. And I think and this is the link to the intentionality in self-leadership, because the intentionality to move towards your objectives, that drive comes because they're your goals. It's your brand. It's not somebody else's goals. You're not doing it because you've been told to do it. You're doing it because you want to do it, and you feel those values, and it's important to you, and you're going to continue to do that. I mean, if we think back, on big brands, we think back to the early days of Microsoft when their drive was to put a computer on every desk in every office on the planet. Well, they achieved that in the early 1990s. They actually achieved that goal. I mean, I'm sitting in front of a computer that has Windows on it. And so they achieved the goal. And then they wallowed for a while as just being a delivery company, just delivering box software. Until they got inspired again with Xbox, and then they got inspired again with the cloud, but they hit that plateau for a while. And you see that happen. You see that happen with brands, don't you? They got the drive, and then they kind of lost it there for a while. So would you share with us perhaps a brand story? So a brand that everybody would know, ups and downs for that brand, and things they did well, things they did badly. What do you have a favorite brand? I know you have lots, but do you have
lots of brands? I'm just trying to think which one I should use. Yeah. So I when I speak, I talk about different brands. There's one brand that I have brands that I respect. Mm-hmm. For example, there's one brand which Pokemon. It's a brand, by the way. I'm not a target audience. I probably never will be, but it's a brand that keeps reinventing itself. Mm-hmm. It's a brand that keeps reinventing itself to stay relevant in the marketplace. And I think that's smart because, you mentioned something about the plateau. As you climb the journey, whether you're a corporate brand or your personal brand, you will climb, and there's a point where you'll come to this plateau. And that's the thing. Go back and do the 5 Ds again.
Yep. Recycle.
Recycle, because if you look at some of the best brands in the world, look at how they have reinvented themselves over the years. You look at your IBMs, you look at your Louis Vuittons. These are brands that have evolved over time. And the key thing is this, when it comes to branding, is how am I going to be relevant to my target audience today and tomorrow? And that's the key. If you get that right, that relevant part, I mean, that's a crucial component for both corporate brands and personal brands.
Very good. Very good. Yes. Well, yeah, Pokemon's, I'm not their target audience. My wife, however, is. She if we go somewhere new, she gets out her phone. And when we were down in Australia, she was very happy to get a kangaroo Pokemon. So
hey, I got to tell you something. This other brand, right? I mean, Hello Kitty.
Yes.
I got to tell you about Hello Kitty.
Again, no, I'm not a target audience for that either.
I can just imagine you with a Hello Kitty cap. So my mom one day calls me up and says, "Son, can you bring me out for lunch?" And I go, "Sure, Mom. Let's go for lunch." And we go, and she goes, I say, "Where do you want to go?" "I'm going to bring you to a great restaurant." She goes, "No, I want to go to McDonald's."
Yeah.
My mom, I drive her to the nearest McDonald's, and there's this huge queue of people queuing up. I'm like, "Mom, this is nuts. What? There are like hundreds of people queuing up."
Mm-hmm.
And she goes, "No, I want to have McDonald's."
Mm-hmm.
And so we got in the queue, and this is what I found out. These people were queuing up to buy a Happy Meal, because with the Happy Meal came a free Hello Kitty stuffed toy.
Wow.
Now, you would think it's all kids.
Yeah.
I would tell you a majority were adults. These were people queuing up for hours to buy a Happy Meal, which, by the way, most of them took the Happy Meal, threw it away, and just kept the toy.
They didn't throw it away. They ate the burger, surely.
They I mean, I saw it. I got pictures.
Wow.
I mean, not everyone did it, but it's this, right? It's the power of queuing up for a toy that they believe is a collector's item. And my mom was one of those people.
Okay.
And again, it's another brand that amazes me, Hello Kitty, at how it has really positioned itself in the marketplace. And wow, the things it has done to drive the brand.
For me, when I think about some of the great brands, I always think about what they're selling is experience rather than the productization, right? Yeah. Because if we're looking at a product and the product is exactly the same, then it comes down to price, right? Coffee obviously is the easy one, because you go into Starbucks and a coffee is $5.50 or nearly $6 now. Whereas here in Singapore, you can go into what we call a kopitiam and you can get a coffee for $1.50, right? But the coffee is the same or similar, but it's the experience, because in Starbucks you feel cool, or your kids and you're studying there, and it's got chairs and it's got the vibe. In the kopitiam, you get your coffee and go. There is no experience. So they're selling not just the product, but the product plus the experience. And I think for me, as a non-brand consultant, as the amateur that I am, is I think, what is the experience? And you and I both being speakers and coaches, people go, well, how are you different? And the challenge for us is, if we're good at what we do, we create an experience for our audience or for our clients, correct? If somebody internally is good at what they do, they create that experience. They make it feel good. Yeah. The difficulty is, of course, is quantifying that, because everybody can use hyperbole and say, well, come to my speech and you will be transformed, right? But it's until they've had that tangible experience, and then that you create the community and the tribe and the bars, etc., that they talk about. It's for me, I think the real challenge for people is, one is, what is the experience you're going to create? And two is, how do you talk about an experience when people haven't experienced it? Does that resonate?
I wrote a book in 2005 that talked about this. And it was inspired by reading my first book called The Experience Economy. Mm-hmm. And it's a powerful book, because actually, I'm going to tell you something. And it's just experience for me today is a given.
Yep.
2005, it was like, oh my God, experience. Today, it's a given. Mm-hmm. We have raised the expectations of our customers to a point where they expect an experience. When you check in a hotel, if it's a 5-star hotel, you expect an experience. So the challenge for brands today is to go beyond that, though.
Yeah.
It's how can I go beyond that experience? How can I know you talked about the word transform, but how can I transform, and how can I create a transformative moment in someone's life when they come and join me? So, for example, it could be, today in the marketplace, is this the ad by Gillette? You realize that Gillette came out, the ad about for men, the Me Too ad. You read about it?
Well, I have read about it. I'm still actually struggling to understand the sensitivity around this one. I'm fairly woke, as they say. I'm on the faculty of Women in Leadership at Singapore Management University. I'm a father of daughters. I don't think I'm racist in the slightest, and I think I'm respectful to all genders regardless. So I'm like, how did people get upset about this one?
So let's give context for people who may not have seen the ad.
Yeah.
So the ad is basically by Gillette, and Gillette shows men.
Yeah.
Gillette, the shaving, and basically it shows men. It's an ad kind of scolding men.
Yeah.
It tells men off, and it tells men that you need to act proper to women.
Sure.
In a nutshell, that's what the ad is all about. And if you're starting to realize this, that in the age of experiences, one of the things that I talk about in my book is this thing called brands taking a stand.
Yeah.
And today, I mean, whether you like the ad or you don't like the ad, you are going to see a lot more of it. Mm-hmm. You're going to see a lot more brands supporting a social cause. You're going to see a lot more brands actually getting very much taking sides, because in the past, brands are like, oh, I don't want to lose customers, but there is a higher level of accountability today for brands, not just for corporate brands, but also personal brands. And with the higher level of accountability, brands, and today we're in the age of transparency, it is so important that for brands to be able to back social causes. So I believe that's what Gillette did, to back a social cause, and I applaud them for it.
Sure. Why people got upset is, as you say, they scolded or they told men off. Yeah. Since I wasn't guilty of the crime, I didn't feel told off. So I didn't feel sensitized to it. People don't like to be told. However, how they've been successful, of course, is now that the free advertising they're getting from everybody talking about the ad multiplies it 1,000%. I mean, the other example of that was Nike. When they got Colin Kaepernick, I think I can never say his name correctly, the American footballer who did the kneeling during the national anthem. When they got him on, and then obviously divided the American market in half to those that thought he was terrible and those that saw, and they were big enough to take the burn, and say, well, you know what, we don't care if you don't want to buy our products. And this comes back to your define piece of your 5D model, right? A Maserati sales crew does not mind if they upset people who are never going to buy a Maserati, or they don't care. So
exactly.
So Gillette being backed by Procter and Gamble are big enough now to say, you know what? We're big enough to say we are the razor for the modern man, not for the Neanderthal man.
Exactly. I love it. I love it. I absolutely do. The point that we were trying to make earlier about experiences. What I'm trying to say is that we've gone beyond experiences. We've gone to a point where brands, experiences need to drive transparency. Experiences need to drive accountability. Experiences need to drive extreme wow moments. We've gone beyond that, right? And I think this is the era that we're in now. There's so much because of the internet and what we see around the world. Really, my goodness, experiences have to evolve. And personal brands, this is my point I make to personal brands. If you are sitting down comfortable and feeling, hey, I'm good, I'm great at what I'm doing, you are in trouble, because the world is changing and you got to catch up.
Wow. So tell me if I'm right here, because I think if you stay around long enough, your time will come. One of the things I personally don't think I have a very high likability factor, but what I do think I have, in terms of a personal brand, is a high challenge factor. And I work with senior level executives, and I tell them right up front, if you hire me, I am going to challenge you and hold you accountable, and that won't always be comfortable. And yet your HR just told you, find a coach you're comfortable with. I'm telling you, don't do that, because if you're comfortable with your coach, that's the wrong coach. But if you're prepared to be uncomfortable, hire me. Am I doing that?
So what you're doing is good, because that's who you are. And one of the things that I talk about in branding is the ability to be authentic. People will smell the fakeness. And the reason why you are successful is because this is who you are. That's the Andrew Bryan brand. You go in and you coach and you give all the value, right? You say it as it is. And that's what makes you authentic as a brand. And that's what people are going to be judging you for. Because today, people can smell a fake brand from miles away. If you are authentic and you stay true to who you are, that's in today's market, in the era of transparency, this is key.
Well, that cycles us way back to where we started with self-leadership is, obviously being self-aware, who you are, and obviously where you want to go. Yeah. And that you are living an authentic life because you know who you are, you know what your values are, you know what you stand for, you're confident in that. And then your vibe attracts your tribe. And I shared this with another speaker on this summit, and he hadn't heard that before. Your vibe attracts your tribe. Is that once upon a time we were reading Dale Carnegie and we had to be nice to everybody. But now it seems that the world is more divisive, and you need to find your market and recognize that it won't be everybody, and be okay with that.
Yeah.
All right.
You can't get everyone to love you, but it's a must to get your target audience, right? The ones that you are communicating with, they must believe in you. They may not necessarily love you, but they must believe in you.
Well, a lot of people are going to struggle with that because they go, well, I want to be liked, I want to be loved, right? But they said, so what happens if you try and be all things to all people?
Yeah, it's challenging. I mean, if you have the resources, it might just happen. If you have the resources, but in most cases you don't. You don't have the time. You don't have the money to spend to get everyone to love you. I mean, if you go into a bar and you buy everyone a drink, for example, they're going to love you for that moment.
Sure.
If you do it, you see what I mean? So you can buy love. You can, and brands sometimes do that. The brands with the money, they spend it, they throw it so they can buy a lot more reach. But in the long run, that's a big danger in it.
Right. So they have to create an experience and stand for something simultaneously.
Yeah.
And so
and be authentic at the same time.
So be authentic at the same time. Well, that is the standing for something. So this is the self-leadership success of it. And for everybody else that I've brought on, I've asked them for their definition of success. So we're at the end of the interview here. Let me spring that on you. What's your definition of success?
My definition of success. So I believe this. I mean, I believe that everyone has their own version of success. Mm-hmm. Success could mean, for example, if I'm at home care, and I mentioned earlier in the interview with a home care person who loves looking after someone who's old, that's her definition of success. So my definition of success is be happy with who you are, be proud of who you are, work towards raising your game in whatever field you're in. It doesn't matter. Success to me, it's not about money. Yeah. It's not even about happiness, right? It's just truly leaving a legacy behind that you can be proud of. That for me is success.
Excellent, man. Leaving that legacy, living a life of authenticity, doing the things that make you happy. Well, you've made me very happy on this show today. Jerome Joseph, thank you very much for sharing your 5 Ds. And we'll put up a link later where people can get resources and find out more about your books and your consulting work and your speaking work around brand. And I hope everybody today is going to work towards being a more authentic brand. Thank you, Jerome, for joining me.
Thank you, Andrew. Thank you for having me on this.
My pleasure. Ciao.
Ciao.